Hello and welcome to another episode of Raising the Bar, bringing you success stories of real people in Hong Kong so you can learn about them, get inspired and continue to raise the bar in your lives. Today we have a topic that is very close to a lot of people's lives, and that is relationships, romantic relationships. So I have here with me Mush Panjwani. He's been married for 28 years, he has 4 children, and he knew at age 15 who he wanted to marry pretty much straight away. And he's got a very successful relationship in my eyes today. This is a topic, once again, as I said, that has been close to the heart of many of my clients and one of the most popular topics I've dealt with in the last 8 years of my career. So welcome, Mush.
Thank you very much for having me here, Sonia.
Mush, would you share with us, in a nutshell, your story of how you met your wife, and how did you know at age 15, when she was 13 years old, that yes, she's the one I want to marry, and you actually manifested that for yourself?
Well, I had just finished high school, Sonia. I was 15, and I used to be attached with this family because of my 2 best friends who were her brothers, and I used to spend a lot of time with the family. And I loved the family, and then I saw her one day, and in an instant I knew she's the one.
So in that moment you just knew, this is the person that I'm going to be with for the rest of my life.
I know, it sounds very, very strange. Even when I think back, I can't believe what had happened at that moment, but that's exactly what had happened. I saw her and I told myself, she's the one for me, and she's the one that I want to marry.
Great. So how did you know? Was it a gut feeling? Was it an instinct? For those people out there who don't know how to tell, how did you know?
I really don't know how, and I don't advise people to look at a girl at the age when they're 15 and the girl is 13 and a half to make that decision. Okay. But somehow I just knew. The family, I liked her, and I didn't know her. I hadn't talked to her. I just saw her. Yeah. And honestly, there's no science to it. Okay. It was just that gut feel. Okay. And I just knew that she's the one. Okay, great. And from that moment to actually getting married to her, was it a very easy transition? Did it happen, with grace, or did you actually have to work on that? It was not easy at all, of course, because I was 15 years old. So I went and told my parents that they have to go and talk to the parents of this girl that I'm in love with and I'm going to marry. And my parents said, you must be out of your mind, you're only 15. And I said, yeah, but I know, I'm not talking about marriage right now, but you gotta go talk to them. You know how this is in these families, she could have been booked already. Okay. Just go and talk to the parents. Okay. But it's very, very hard. Okay. But I did that finally. Okay. And of course the parents of the girls were very shocked. Okay. And they also said it's too early. Okay. So nothing much happened until a few years later. Okay. And then it was finally what we call baat pakki, and then one thing to the other. In Pakistan, in a lot of Muslim countries, girls get set up at an early age. Okay. Parents decide. Okay. That's how it happened with being my parents. Okay. Before they were even born, or as soon as they were born, the 2 friends decided that my son is going to marry your daughter. Okay. As soon as they were born. And sometimes it happens as early as that, sometimes it happens even before they're born. 2 friends decide that if I have a girl and you have a boy, they're going to marry each other. Okay. But of course that's not as common anymore these days, but it's very common for, at least in those days, and I'm talking about 28 years ago, it was very common, and in that particular family, for parents to start worrying about the right match when the girl is about 15 years old. One of the things that I should add, which made it very, very difficult, was that she was from a rich family and I was very, very poor. Okay. So that was the other twist in the story. Yeah. So you had to bridge that gap. Yes, of course. Okay. And so that was one of the reasons, that was one of my biggest inspirations in life, why I had to change my life to make sure that I provide her with all the comforts and luxuries and a good life that she deserved. Okay. And did you set up that whole stage before you got married? No. No. I was on my path. Okay. To making the changes in my life. Okay. I was already working and I was already enjoying some level of success. Okay. And of course the parents could see that I'm on the right path. I was not wealthy. I was not very I had not achieved all the success.
Okay.
But the father of the girl believed in my potential. He just knew that I was going to be very successful and happy, and I was going to keep his daughter happy.
Okay, great. So here we have a man who said, this is the woman that I'm going to marry. There were financial differences, and with perseverance and enrollment, you enrolled the entire family into it, and then the father gave you his daughter with his blessing and permission. How were the first few years for you? Because I know that especially when you haven't been dating, that's when you see the differences with each other, that's when you see the personalities, and very often that's when, you know, the clashes come to the surface. And for someone who's going to step into this myself, I would love to hear your advice.
Well, there's something in the Muslim families called nikah.
Okay.
Our nikah is like a marriage on paper,
Yeah.
except that the girl continues to live with her parents until the wedding date.
Okay.
So our nikah was done when I was 18,
Okay.
and she was 16 and a half.
Okay.
And at that time, we had thought, or actually I had committed, that the marriage will not be until I'm 25 and successful and happy and settled in life.
Okay.
But then of course within a year and a half of, so what happened was, as soon as the nikah was done,
Yeah.
we started seeing each other, we started meeting each other, we started going out once in a week, getting to know each other.
Okay.
And then we decided that we should be together sooner rather than later. And a year and a half later, we did the wedding ceremony and she moved. So we had that year and a half to establish that relationship before she moved in with me. I think it's all about communication. It's all about getting to know each other, and the best way to get to know each other is by talking to each other, by being honest, by listening, which is a big part of communication. You know, so let the other person talk and listen and understand.
Okay.
And really, that's how we got to understand each other. We got to develop a respect for each other, a love for each other. So our love story actually began when we started seeing and talking to each other.
Okay, which was after the nikah, which is the marriage.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, great. And what would you say with communication, what are the necessary qualities to have? And I'm sure once you started talking to each other, with the talking and the listening and all of that, there would be differences of opinion. How did you handle that in a way that works for you?
At that time in my life, I was not a great communicator. At that time in my life, I had not learned all the success principles that I know today.
Yeah.
So of course I was making a lot of mistakes, but the advice that I give to people today about communication is to make sure to adjust your expectations. Just like in any relationship, whether it's you're with your kids or with your friends or with your employee and boss, it's all about expectations.
Yeah.
And unrealistic expectations would lead to disappointments. No, you have to have positive expectations.
Okay.
You expect the other person to reciprocate with love and with communication, with understanding. But unrealistic expectations means that you expect that person to become like you.
Okay.
Unrealistic expectation would mean that suddenly your tastes and your preferences start to match with each other. That's never going to happen.
Yes. Yeah. I have studied that myself. Like, one of the biggest downfalls in romantic relationships is expecting the other person to behave like you, judging them by who you are, and the best part is not even communicating this to them. So they don't even know that they're being judged according to who you are and how you are.
Exactly. So
adjusting expectations for you is just part of accepting them, would you say? Accepting them for who they are, the way they are.
Absolutely, absolutely. You accept the way they are, you accept that there are differences, you accept that we are two different individuals with two different mindsets, two different upbringings, and with completely different tastes and preferences in life, and you accept those. And then there are times when you adjust your preferences because sometimes you want to accommodate the other person.
Right, okay. A lot of people, you know, sometimes we get into this ego battle, like, why should I adjust, or maybe it shouldn't be me, and is it only me that keeps wanting to mold myself to fit the other person? And I keep hearing a lot of these stories. How would you put this in your life, or what advice would you give to people that are struggling with this?
In general, if you want to be a happy person, you have to accept responsibility for any relationship. You have to accept. It starts with accepting responsibility and saying, there's something that I gotta change. Even before you find your ideal self, when girls ask me, You know, when they say, I'm looking for my ideal.
Yeah.
Maybe it's coming in your questions,
Yeah.
or maybe I thought we've passed that stage, so I'm going back a little bit.
This is great, yeah.
When girls say that I'm looking for the ideal, my
Yeah.
advice always is that you focus on becoming the ideal person.
Yes.
That will attract the
Yes.
ideal partner, rather than going out and looking for that particular ideal person.
Okay.
So in my mind, it all starts with you.
Yeah.
And that's a general happiness principle. You want to be a happy person, it all starts with you. You got to be happy with yourself. You got to be accepting responsibility for everything good or bad in your life, and work on yourself.
Yeah.
And it's so important in relationships, and so particularly in marriage, that when something is not going right, instead of immediately fixing the blame and trying to put the blame on the other person, you accept responsibility. At least that's the starting point, and you say, what could I do differently?
I'm sure that as in any other relationships, there must have been challenges in yours too. So when you did come across those challenges and when things were getting a little bit difficult, how did you handle that?
I was not a great husband in the first couple of years.
Okay.
I wish I was. And so I was not being a great husband, which means I was doing certain things which were not helping our relationship. But Salma, my wife, she was so great, the way she handled all of that.
Okay.
And I think it was because of that, the foundation of absolute love for each other and the absolute commitment for each other.
Okay.
Which means there was no question, there was no doubt in our mind, or there was not even an option that we could be apart, that we could, which is very often the case in a lot of relationships. They say that if it doesn't work out, then we'll just split.
Yeah.
And if that option is just not there, then what's the other option? The other option is that you're going to be together.
Yeah. And when you said that Salma was so great in those first couple of years of marriage, can you tell us anything that she did or the way of being that made her so great?
She would compromise.
Okay.
I was trying to impose my my ideas on her. I was trying to impose what I expected in my wife in my first couple of years, and I was just being a very typical Pakistani man, I guess. And she compromised, and she accepted all that, and she tried to mold herself. She didn't completely change, but she would try and accommodate as much as possible, and I'm glad she did that, and that just made it all possible. I actually wrote a blog which is 45 tips for a happy marriage, and we wrote that. We wrote that together. I wrote that with help from Salma actually, on my blog, and we wrote that on our 25th wedding anniversary. It was quite popular. I encourage anybody interested to read all those 45 tips. But in a nutshell, they grouped in 3 things.
Yes.
The first one is communication.
Okay.
The second one is keeping the romance alive.
Okay.
And the third one is small things.
Okay.
Alright? And there are 15 tips under each one of those.
Okay.
And I don't even remember all 45 of them now.
Could you give us one of each section?
Yeah, in communication, it's important that you talk to each other. You be honest with each other. And when the other person is talking, you listen and you pay attention. And you really listen.
Okay.
And you find time for communicating. Sometimes we get very busy. For us, one of the best rituals is to go out on evening walks. Regardless of what's going on in our lives, regardless of the number of kids we have had, and regardless of how old they are and what's going on, we try and find time to go out, just her and me, for an hour of walk in the evening.
Is this every day?
Almost every day.
Beautiful.
And we've been doing that for many, many years. And that's our ritual too. That's our time to talk to each other. That's our time away from distractions.
Okay.
That's the time we talk to each other.
Okay.
And of course it's walking and all of that is the extra benefits. That's the ritual.
Okay.
We try and go out and have a meal once in a week.
Okay.
Just 2 of us.
Okay.
We go out on a honeymoon every year on our anniversary.
Beautiful.
And the fun and what is behind all of this is to find time for each other.
Yes.
Where there's nothing else. There's just 2 of us.
Okay.
And we communicate, and we talk, and we listen, and we share our dreams, and we share our goals, and we share our problems. And things that we haven't talked sometimes come up. like in our last honeymoon, just a couple of weeks ago.
Wow.
There were things that were bothering one of us, which we
Yeah.
hadn't shared in the last few months, but that was an opportunity, something came up. And of
Okay.
course, it was a great moment. So that's all about communications, just being completely open, being completely honest, finding the time
Yes.
to talk.
Yes. And finding the time, I think, is one of the key things. Because here, especially in Hong Kong, we get so wrapped up and we get so busy, and we could have something to do every 5 minutes if we so chose to. But it's making that commitment to take that time, and you said every day with your wife. You go for a walk every day, you have one meal a week, just the two of you, and then you have a holiday. So these rituals, you think, has been a big part of actually keeping that communication alive. And how about something from your keeping the romance alive?
Yep, I'm glad you remember that. That's the second part. You know what happens when you start dating each other? You put your best foot forward,
Yes.
and you dress up, and
Yeah.
you make up,
Yeah.
and you be the nice person, and you be the gentleman, and you be the good girl, and we do all of that. And how you buy flowers, and how you do cards, and you send love you cards, and thank you cards, and I don't know what happens in most people's life after the first couple of years. It's all forgotten. And that's what I mean about keeping the romance alive. It takes, you have to make an effort to keep the romance alive.
Okay.
You have to continue doing those special things that you did for each other when you were first seeing each other. And again, it's all of those things.
Yeah.
Dressing up for each other, making up for each other. You know, sometimes I ask, what's happening? Why are you dressing up? Where are you going? And she says, no, I'm just dressed up for you. And I love that.
Yes. Yeah.
So you don't have to wait for a birthday, because that comes once in a year. You don't have to wait for Valentine. You know,
Yes.
every day is a Valentine if you're in love. You don't have to wait for... So how many... If you waited for occasions, there'll be 3 occasions or 4.
Yeah.
Anniversary, hers birthday, my birthday, and Valentine. 4 occasions. Not good enough. You need to do 4 thank you cards and birthday cards and cakes and chocolates and stuff a month, not 4 times a year. So that's all about keeping the romance alive.
So the things that you used to do to keep the romance alive in the beginning of the courtship, dressing up, flowers without a reason, well, the reason is the love, as you said. Do you think that after a while doing these things gets monotonous? How do you make those things exciting? After 28 years, how do you make these things exciting? Or is there anything that you do that we could learn and steal from your ideas?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
You have to be creative.
Yeah.
You can't do the same stuff every
Yeah.
time. You can't send flowers every month. So it's flowers and cards is the simple stuff.
Okay.
But these days, you could send a love you note on an SMS.
Right.
Just surprising each other.
Okay.
It's about talking to each other once a day during your lunch break.
Yes.
Again, it's about just calling to say I love you.
What I found in my experience, both in my personal life as well as my professional life, is really understanding how the other person wants to feel loved. Because once again, we make the mistake of judging others by our own behavior, and just because I like surprises may not mean he likes surprises, or I like to receive messages directly doesn't mean the other way around. So understanding the way the other person wants to be loved, I found to be a very key element of a relationship. How have you found this that's applied to yours?
I think there are certain universal things that I stick with.
Okay.
I think every girl loves flowers, and I do that. Men love time and attention, and women love time. It's about time and attention, I think. That's the whole message behind it. The thought that you have taken out the time out of your busy life, and you have thought about something, you're planning a surprise. And I think everybody loves surprises, as long as you do it the right way, as long as you don't surprise her with 20 guests that she may or may not like.
Right.
Everybody loves surprises.
Yeah.
You know, getting a gift in your mailbox.
Yeah.
You know, it's a surprise, and you're going to love it. And you may not like the gift inside. I may have not chosen the best gift for you, but you would love the idea of getting a surprise gift. A thank you message, making sure that you call during a lunch hour, at least once a day. When you're away, you call. Those are all little things. Keeping the in-laws out of your relationship is not a little thing, but for some it's a little thing, but making an effort that the in-laws are out of the relationship is not helpful. It's probably under communication section.
Okay.
If something is bothering her or him, you actually find time to quickly address that and not say, oh, that's a small issue. It's okay. She'll be fine. No, don't assume that she's going to be fine. You have to quickly find out what's bothering her or him and listen and quickly address that.
Right.
If you have an argument, try and settle that before you go to bed, because tomorrow may be too late.
People either go through the cycle of suppression, explosion, suppression, explosion, or there's another route which is expression. So if we do suppress, we will suppress until, you know, one small thing will just bend you over and then there will be an explosion. But I have again found people asking, well, what's the best way to express? Like if there is a persistent complaint, especially if it's about a sensitive area, what's the best way to express this to your partner?
In fact, even before that, maybe I should share another tip.
Yeah.
Again, it has to do with unrealistic expectations. It has to do with, and I think it comes under small things. And I often find that small things add up, as you rightly said. Don't bother. Like men have this habit of not putting the cap back on the toothpaste tube, for example, right? Sometimes they have a habit of leaving their towel in the wrong place after taking the shower, or leaving their socks in the wrong place. And yes, you can try to change that and communicate that that's not how you like it. But in the end, if he doesn't change, then he's not going to change. You have to accept that one day. And that small thing has to stop bothering you one day. One day you have to make a decision that this is how he is, this is where he likes to towel after the shower. He's not doing that on purpose. He's not doing that to annoy you. He's not doing that because he doesn't follow the discipline in the house. It's bothering you, you move it around. It's a very small thing. And when we said expressing, you express it. You can say that, you know, when you leave your towel around, it bothers me. Can you not do that? And maybe he will change, maybe he won't change. If he changes, good luck, great job. Chances are he's not going to change. Read that book called Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. It's for both men and women. And if you have to deal with the opposite sex, you have to read that book, because you have to understand that men and women are completely different. You have to accept that it's not just the other person is different from you, it's men and women are almost opposites. And there are certain things that make each other different, and just knowing that will make a big difference. So that's a general tip for both men and women, to understand and accept that men and women are different.
How about for a woman? Is there anything that you could advise us to understand men better?
Well, once you understand that men are from Mars, you would understand that a lot of things that are obvious to you are not so obvious to men. Men are in their own world. There are things, and again, I think it applies to both. There are certain things that I think that are very obvious to you, but that's not on your horizon. But women are more detailed in general, and they notice everything in detail, and they're so when my wife asks me, not anymore, a long time ago, what do you think about my new hairstyle? A typical man will have to work hard at thinking what has changed in the hairstyle. Chances are that he has absolutely no idea. So to expect that, so if he doesn't notice that you've changed your hairstyle, it's not because he's not noticing you, he's not looking at you, he doesn't like you anymore. It's just how his brain works. He's probably not even going to notice if you change the color of the entire apartment. Change the furniture one day, and he's probably going to just come and sit on the sofa, and he wouldn't even realize it's a completely new sofa. And that might really upset you, but that's how man's brain works.
And I think it's the meaning that we make from it, right? Like many people make that mean he doesn't love me, or he doesn't notice me, or any other interpretation that we make. So it's adjusting those expectations and even the interpretations of that. So thank you, Mush, so much for speaking with us today and showing us how we can energize our romantic relationships so we can continue bringing out the best with each other and continue complementing each other. Thank you so much for being with us.